Late at night, the headquarters of Al Zain Corporation remained lit, its towering glass windows reflecting the dim light of street lamps outside. The building, magnificently designed, was a symbol of prosperity and power. But on that night, in a quiet meeting room, a horrifying story was beginning. The ringing of a phone echoed through the bathroom, breaking the eerie silence. The janitor, a middle-aged woman, had discovered a terrifying sight. She hurried to the meeting room, where important meetings with the corporation's leaders were typically held. However, tonight was a different story. As she entered, a chilling scene unfolded before her eyes. Ramy al-Salem, a young employee of Al Zain Corporation, lay motionless on the floor. His face still held an expression of fear, his eyes wide open, his mouth moving as if to call for help but unable to. His body seemed crushed under the invisible weight of utter terror. The only sign of life left on him were the bruises around his neck, a clear indication that he had been strangled to death. The computer and documents were still on the table, but a small object lying quietly next to Ramy's laptop caught the woman's attention. A USB, placed neatly as though it were the key to a horrifying secret someone had tried to conceal. The janitor hurriedly dialed the phone, her voice trembling. "Police, there's a dead body in the meeting room. Immediate help needed." Al Zain Corporation, a powerful empire in the oil and technology industries, had always been a symbol of wealth and influence in the Middle East. Yousef Al Zain, the CEO of the corporation, was the head of this colossal force. A man with handsome looks, refined manners, and always praised as a role model for success. He had built this empire from humble beginnings in the early years of his business, rising swiftly thanks to his sharp intellect and ability to seize opportunities. People looked up to him with respect and admiration. However, hidden behind that glamorous exterior were dark stories no one dared acknowledge. It was well known that Yousef Alabama Zain wielded power not only in business circles but also in politics and society. He was the one who organized lavish parties where power and wealth were openly exchanged. Yet the rumors about him, stories of illicit relationships, financial scandals, and questionable ethical behavior were always kept in the dark, waiting for a moment of light to expose them. Meanwhile, Ramy al-Salem, a young man who had recently joined the corporation, seemed to be a new ray of hope for Al Zain. He was a good communicator, always eager to learn and passionate. Everyone admired him for his hard work and relentless effort. For Ramy, working at Al Zain was not just a job. It was a pathway to achieving his big dreams and opportunity to become part of the great empire Yousef had built. But perhaps Ramy never imagined that this promising path would lead him to a terrifying dead end, where death would be an inevitable outcome. Ramy and Yousef had a complex, unclear relationship. Initially, Ramy was highly valued and given opportunities for advancement, but the temptations and manipulations of power from Yousef gradually pushed him into a situation beyond his control. The lavish parties filled with alcohol and invitations for sexual advances drew Ramy into a world he was unprepared for. But by the time he realized that he was being watched and manipulated, it was too late. The secrets were threatened. The USB Ramy left behind before his death was not a coincidence. It was the key to the truth, a truth that could potentially destroy Yousef Alabama Zain's entire empire. And now, that USB, along with Ramy's death, was the first clue leading to an inevitable investigation. Who killed Ramy? And why? In an empire of power, where everything could be concealed, would the truth ever be revealed? What will the police do with the USB? Could it have enough power to drag the dark secrets into the light? The answer perhaps will change everything. The police arrived at the scene that same night after receiving the emergency call. As they entered the meeting room, the air was thick with an eerie stillness. Everything seemed the same, except for the absence of Ramy Alabama Salem and the cold presence of death. The lingering scent of cigarettes and expensive food filled the air, creating an odd scene in what appeared to be a space reserved for important discussions by powerful figures. But at that moment, all that remained was a mysterious silence. On the desk, next to expensive fountain pens and unopened files, A small object lay there, placed oddly and neatly, the USB. No one knew why it was there, but it was clear that it played an important role in this case. The police officers immediately seized it and took it for examination. As soon as the USB was connected to the computer system, strange images began to appear. The first video was a covert recording in the company's restroom. The footage was blurry and of low quality, but it was still clear enough to recognize a familiar man, Yousef Al-Zain. He appeared in these secretive clips, behaving inappropriately with male employees, actions that were easily identifiable as not just unethical but also sexually assaultive. What shocked the investigators was that there was not just one, but multiple such videos stored on the USB. Footage from the lavish parties held at Yousef Al-Zain's mansion also appeared. Particularly, there was a clip showing Ramy, the deceased, attending these parties. He was smiling, sometimes seeming at ease, but in his eyes, there was something ambiguous, as though Ramy didn't truly belong there. The footage captured half-joking, half-serious conversations, awkward gestures, and dim lighting reflecting off unfamiliar faces. The police couldn't help but draw a connection between Ramy and Yousef Al-Zain. These videos unveiled a completely new side to these parties. They weren't just gatherings for the powerful, but encounters filled with manipulation, coercion, and possibly seduction. The biggest question now is, why did Ramy attend these parties? And could his death be the result of his silence in the face of these depraved acts? One of the first people the police called in as a witness was Ayman al-Rafiq, Ramy's best friend and colleague. Ayman knew Ramy better than anyone. Ramy had confided in him multiple times about the pressures he was facing at the company. He always said that he had to do the right thing, no matter the circumstances, Ayman recalled, his voice lowering. Ramy wasn't someone who could easily be manipulated, but recently he had become more tense and anxious than ever. I could sense that he didn't want to leave the company, but he felt like he was trapped between two difficult choices. Ayman said that Ramy had mentioned strange encounters and secrets surrounding the parties. He always said, "If I don't do this, it'll affect my career." But Ramy didn't always tell me everything, and I couldn't help him, Ayman confessed. But not all testimonies seemed clear. Jamal, a senior employee at the Al-Zain Group, who was believed to be close to Yousef Al-Zain, was also summoned by the police. When asked about the relationship between Yousef and Ramy, as well as what had happened the night Ramy died, Jamal was uncooperative. He avoided the questions, gave vague answers, and often avoided the detective's gaze. "There's nothing unusual in the company. Everything is fine," Jamal replied tersely when asked about the videos on the USB. However, Jamal's tense demeanor and his evasive glances made the police begin to suspect him. It seemed that he knew more than he was letting on. Perhaps Jamal was not just an ordinary employee, but had a role in this case, and the unanswered questions still hung in the air, waiting for his testimony. The big question arose, could the USB be just a piece of a larger secret network and crime hidden within the Al-Zain Group? Yousef Al-Zain is no stranger to the business world and society in the Middle East. Born into a prestigious family with a long history of running large companies, he has had a significant influence on the economy. As the CEO of the Al-Zain Group, he is not only a wealthy man but also a symbol of success in the business world. However, if one only looks at this outward appearance, they would never know the dark secrets he has buried in his past. Despite being recognized as a successful individual, Yousef Al-Zain has often been involved in major scandals. Before holding the highest position at the Al-Zain Group, he ran many other companies in the Middle East, and during that time, he was repeatedly accused of sexually abusing male employees. These lawsuits were always forgotten, never reaching any clear conclusion. Thanks to his power and widespread connections, Yousef could always conceal the truth with money, influence, and the power he held. Although the abuse allegations were never fully addressed, these stains on his record are little known when looking at the persona Yousef has built in front of the public: a passionate businessman, a model father, and a talented leader. But now all the secrets about him, things that had been hidden for so long, are starting to surface. Former victims have come forward, and a big question is starting to form. Is Yousef really the trustworthy man everyone thought he was? In Yousef's world, power doesn't just come from the reputation and wealth he has built. It also comes from a perfect system of manipulation, a network that young employees cannot escape from. Just one invitation to a lavish party and newcomers, young employees, will quickly be sucked into the whirlpool of power and seduction. At these decadent parties, where all rules are thrown out, Yousef is not only the host but also the one who controls everything from the shadows. Yousef's parties are not just extravagant social events, they are places where his victims are seduced, manipulated, and trampled on. Those who don't follow his lead will face not only being ostracized within the company, but also enduring brutal threats. The secretly filmed videos and sensitive images captured at these parties become the sharp weapons Yousef uses to bind employees to his network. Once they fall into his hands, these people cannot escape. They cannot break free from his control. The scene at these parties is not just about enjoying alcohol and dancing. At Yousef's lavish villas, participants are forced to take part in dark games, where they must comply with every demand without daring to resist. Ramy al-Salem, the young employee, was sucked into this whirlwind when he couldn't refuse Yousef's invitation. But as Ramy began to feel threatened, feeling like he was no longer himself, the price he had to pay was his very life. To maintain his power and control, Yousef could not do everything alone. And then Jamal al-Karim, his loyal henchman, was entrusted with carrying out the dirty deeds. Jamal, a seasoned employee, was given critical tasks by Yousef to manage the parties and handle the aftermath. He was not only the one who helped Yousef install hidden cameras to secretly film the participants, but also the one who cleaned up everything after each event, ensuring that the secrets never saw the light of day. Jamal was the only one who could stand close to Yousef without raising suspicion. He was the epitome of loyalty, of absolute silence. But that very silence also hid the dark secrets that Jamal had become involved in. He was the one who secretly filmed Ramy in moments when Ramy could not defend himself. He followed every order, from luring young employees to erasing all traces, ensuring the perpetrators remained safe. But everything started to change when Ramy al-Salem's death made the secrets impossible to keep hidden in the shadows. Questions about Yousef al-Zain's behavior began to surface again, and Jamal's loyalty to him might not be enough to conceal the crimes both of them had committed. Could everything continue to be hidden in the dark, or would the truth finally be exposed? As former witnesses began to speak out, could Yousef al-Zain escape the punishment of justice? And what about Jamal Karim, his loyal henchman? Could he withstand the investigation, or would he be pushed to face the actions he himself had carried out? The answer could only be found through the yet unrevealed evidence and those who were willing to stand up and confront the truth. When the police arrived at the scene and found the USB in the victim's hand, doubts began to creep into their minds. It was not just any ordinary USB, but the key to unlocking a door full of secrets and danger. Under the dim light of the lamps, the USB became a symbol of the hidden truth, containing images and documents that could turn everything upside down. But what surprised the police was not just the presence of the USB, but the truth about the relationship between Ramy al-Salem and Yousef al-Zain. A relationship that, from the outside, no one could have guessed, but it concealed dark nights and ruthless manipulation. Ramy was not an ordinary employee in Yousef's eyes. He was an important part of a world where power and money could buy everything, including love and integrity. Initially, Ramy was a young man full of ambition, with big dreams and a desire to rise in his career. And it was this ambition that led him into the seductive trap of Yousef al-Zain. At first, their relationship seemed like a romantic affair, a combination of power and the desire to climb the ladder. Yousef, with his influence, promised to elevate Ramy to new heights, offering him opportunities that many could only dream of. Lavish parties, promises of better jobs, wealth, and fame — these were all things that made a young man like Ramy, full of passion and eager to prove himself, unable to refuse. He was drawn into this relationship not just by the feeling of being loved, but also by the promises of a bright future. However, over time, Ramy began to realize that the relationship was not what he had imagined. The affection that Yousef showed was not genuine concern but control, manipulation. Ramy began to feel trapped in a web of guilt from which he couldn't escape. Private meetings, threatening conversations, criticism, and disdain, all of it created a heavy pressure that Ramy could no longer bear. He realized he had been exploited, but no matter how hard he tried to leave, the truth was that Yousef was too powerful, too influential for Ramy to break free from his control. The only way he could protect himself was to bring Yousef's wrongdoings to light. Ramy was not someone who would easily give up. After realizing the truth about Yousef, he decided he would not stand idly and let him continue his reign of terror. He began gathering everything he could to prove his former lover's guilt: secretly recorded videos, confidential documents that Yousef believed would remain hidden forever. The videos from the debauched parties Yousef organized, the images capturing the dark scenes from their secret meetings. Ramy kept everything. He knew that if he didn't act now, everything would be forgotten, just like the previous cases that Yousef had successfully concealed. The USB that the police found was the very document Ramy had decided to hand over to them, the only evidence that could expose Yousef and bring justice to his victims. These files weren't just hidden videos, but also copies of internal company documents, undeniable proof of the abuse, manipulation, and harassment Yousef had committed over the years. Ramy had bravely decided to face the truth and endure the consequences, with only one hope in mind: to reveal the truth, even if it meant losing everything. But Yousef was not one to forgive easily. When he learned that Ramy had begun gathering evidence, he wasted no time executing his ruthless plan. To protect himself and his career, Yousef didn't hesitate to end Ramy's life to silence the secrets he held. Ramy became a victim of his own bravery and desire to do the right thing. And so, the USB, the only piece of evidence that could expose the truth, became the only piece of evidence that could lead the police to the mastermind. However, would the USB be powerful enough to put Yousef behind bars, or would it just be another trick to conceal even darker secrets? The questions surrounding Ramy Alabama Salem's death still remained unanswered, and the story had only just begun. Jamal Alabama Karim sat silently in the interrogation room, his gaze seemingly empty. After a long silence, he confessed, "I killed Ramy, but I had no choice." The response made the atmosphere in the room tense, like a balloon on the verge of bursting. The truth behind those words slowly began to unravel. Yousef Al-Zain, the powerful CEO of Al-Zain Group, had not only built a strong economic empire, but also created his own world, where power and ambition were exchanged through lavish parties. People like Ramy, new to the industry and full of ambition, were sucked into this whirlwind. But when Ramy discovered the dark secrets about Yousef, he couldn't turn a blind eye. He began gathering evidence of the wrongdoings, determined to expose the truth. The USB that the police found was proof of Ramy's determination. It contained videos and documents that recorded Yousef's harassment. But before Ramy could hand it over to the authorities, he paid the ultimate price with his life. Yousef, realizing that Ramy posed a serious threat, ordered his execution. Jamal, Yousef's loyal confidant, could not refuse his orders. He carried out the murder as directed, his hands clean of blood, but his conscience was stained. Under Yousef's manipulation, those who refused to comply were threatened, drawn into a dark world where every principle was broken. Jamal, though unwilling, continued to help Yousef cover up the crimes, from installing cameras to erasing damning evidence. Ramy's murder was just one piece of a much larger criminal puzzle, and now, the truth was slowly coming to light. Armed with a search warrant, the police raided Yousef's mansion early one morning. Upon entering, they not only seized documents and hidden videos, but also uncovered countless pieces of evidence linked to the debauched parties Yousef organized. Photographs, secretly recorded videos capturing senior executives of the company participating in dark revelries, were all systematically stored. All evidence pointed to Yousef, and the police realized they had uncovered a large criminal organization, a criminal underworld that Yousef had built over the years. Immediately, a wave of outrage erupted in society. Those who had been victims of Yousef, including Ayman al-Rafiq, a close colleague of Ramy, boldly came forward to expose his wrongdoings. The testimonies of Ayman and other employees, no longer silenced or threatened, shocked the public. The people behind the truth no longer had to fear. As for Jamal, the trusted right-hand man of Yousef, he was finally arrested. When faced with the police, he could only bow his head, unable to hide the fear in his eyes. "I was just a tool," Jamal stated without resistance. He said that he had only followed Yousef's orders, and now, when everything had been exposed, he felt like he had been used. However, no matter how much Jamal confessed, the truth remained unchanged. All the crimes led back to Yousef, the mastermind behind it all. Jamal now had to face a heavy sentence, while Yousef, despite still holding significant power, could not escape the inevitable downfall that awaited him. Yousef al-Zain, the head of the al-Zain group, was finally forced to face trial for his crimes. After a lengthy investigation, he was convicted of multiple serious charges, including sexual harassment, voyeurism, and complicity in murder. All of these criminal acts led to him paying a high price. The power structure he had built over the years, with its lavish parties and manipulative control over employees, was now fully exposed. The court sentenced Yousef to 45 years in prison, a sentence that could not be reduced. While 45 years was a long time, it was not enough to compensate for the pain he had caused his victims. Under Yousef's leadership, the al-Zain group now faced a risk of collapse. The relationships between employees, especially with the senior staff, had been completely shattered. The company's reputation was tarnished, becoming an indelible stain in the industry. Shareholders and business partners began to withdraw, unwilling to be associated with a corporation that had become the center of scandal. Ayman al-Rafiq, Ramy's close friend and one of Yousef's victims, decided to publicly share his story. In an interview with the media, Ayman recounted how he had been deceived and exploited by Yousef, and how Ramy had paid the ultimate price with his life. Ayman urged others who had been victims of Yousef to speak out, so that this evil man would no longer be able to wreak havoc. He called for justice for Ramy and hoped that other victims could find comfort and hope in his words. The story ended with a powerful message about the strength of justice. No matter how powerful or wealthy the wrongdoer may be, the truth will eventually come to light. Justice may be delayed, but it will never be denied. This event was a clear testament to the fact that no one can escape the sins they have committed, no matter how much they try to justify or hide them.